Thank you very much. Now we're starting the keynote addresses, and first speaker supposed to be M.A. K.P. Singh, a well-known figure in the power sector. He is the Chief Information Security Officer of Ministry of Power and also member of Central Electricity Authority. But because of certain reasons, he has to travel outside the country. You can understand his importance. That as on yesterday evening, he was supposed to be coming, but now he's not coming. But he sent his representative who will speak in the end. So I now request our next guest, Shri Amit Sharma. Amit Sharma and me known to each other for a very long period. He is associated with cyber security, I think, among sitting here, one of the longest time in the ministries and DRDOs. And his knowledge on the subject of cyber security, its compliances, its regulatory affairs is amazing. He knows practically every rules and laws related to the subject, to the core, and of course the complete technology too. So I request Shri Amit Sharma to enlighten us. Please, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it is indeed a pleasure, and I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers, especially the Cybersecurity Association of India, for conducting this particular event. Very apt, and specifically the timing of it is equally more interesting. Now, if you talk and trust me, Sani ji, it's, you know, his brief is quite overwhelming. It's not the case. I always believe there is always more to learn in life, and of course in technology, that's there. Having said so, we need to understand that over the last couple of years, technology has transformed the way in which we work. It's not the fact, and especially, you know, this galvanization of technology has happened during the post-COVID era. It's not the fact that, technology is now a force multiplier, but it's a strategic need. It's the dependence is there. We are reliant onto it. But what COVID changed was one thing which was really fundamental. It changed our security paradigms. Our classical thought process of parameter-based security has changed into a security where, you know, the boundaries do not exist. Things are lucid, and that's what is more, worrisome. It's always, coming from Ministry of Defense, it's always sometimes convenient when you have fixed set of boundaries, fixed set of AORs. You know where you have to go, where you do not have to go. Things become much more easier because you know what you have to protect, what you don't have to protect. But now when there is a scenario where you have scenarios such as work from home, where you have scenarios where the collaboration is not happening at one physical location and it's transgressed across boundaries, things have changed. And this is further exacerbated by the fact that most of our critical information infrastructure are now transgressed into the cyberspace. Again, as I said, it's no more a luxury, it's a strategic dependence, and this is something we need to comply with. That's one of the important aspects. Now let's come to these critical information infrastructure, and let's understand that why these critical information infrastructure are so essential for the country and why they are part of national security. Critical information infrastructure, and I'm pretty sure, in the morning session, a lot of people would have spoken about it. The DG NCIPC was here. Critical information infrastructure, they form the bedrock of most of your services and the infrastructure which operate in the classical domain. Now, when you have this informationization of your critical infrastructure, again, informationization of your critical infrastructure, that's the critical part. The moment you have that, what happens, informationization itself brings along with it certain good parts in terms of, your increasing your capabilities, but at the same time, it brings certain nefarious components associated with it. And that is something that we need to look in this particular sector. Why critical information infrastructure is so essential for the integral component of the national security? It's primarily because of the fact that most of the national security aspects and the deliverance of the governance is primarily based on a background which is of integrated networks of these CII infrastructure, and that's the fundamental part of it. Now, once we understand this CII part, and I'm pretty sure that most of you are already aware of it, let's come to the power sector itself and what power sector as one particular major CII, what challenges it face, and what are the future things that need to be there. I would classify these challenges into 4 essential parts. The first part, I'm pretty sure each one would have spoken to you. That's with regard to survivability of these critical information infrastructures. Of course, if your power is not there or electricity is not there, then essentially most of the systems that are reliant onto it, they have a catastrophic effect, and there is a concept of what is called as arithmetic progression in terms of consequence effect. Any of you would have read about consequence analysis. So that gives you the arithmetic progression, which transgresses into what is called as exponential progression when it comes to the effects. When we talk about the power sector, again, 3 important components. First is the generation part that is there. The second part is the transmission part that is there. And the third part, is something where the humans or your normal day-to-day, housing and everything is connected onto it, where the citizens delivery component works onto it. Hence, if you look into it, I believe that the survivability is one of the most important part, and we'll talk about that. But another important aspect which probably most of the regulators in this sector need to look into is that the DPDP bill is already there. You are looking into the promulgation of it and the notification of it probably next couple of months. Now, why I'm telling about DPDP and specifically in a critical information infrastructure side, please understand that the power sector has among the largest PII data of not just individuals, but also organizations, facilities, locations, including actual locations where these have been installed. Now, this data is phenomenally, massive, and the quantum of effect that it would generate if this data is leaked out, that's one part that people need to look into. And with DPDP, I can see Kanika here, so she'll talk more about DPDP. The moment DPDP comes into the force, trust me, the liabilities onto the companies is going to increase metamorphically. You won't be able to, you're talking about something like, 250 crore or something, that's the kind of, that's the kind of fine that you have to pay if in case you have what we call as a data breach. So far, you were more concentrated. In fact, I'm pretty sure each one would have spoken to you about the CT aspect, the OT aspect, the survivability or the sustenance aspect. But one aspect that you need to look into as part of this sector and as part of the overall regulators is that you are the custodian of the largest PII, and you have to be compliant with the data privacy aspects that are coming up as part of the DP bill, and that's something you need to look into. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is more from the national security in terms of survival part. Now, the critical part that India as a country faced, and this sector, and it's not just about India. Power sector, if you see over a period of time, it's not something that suddenly you started building ab initio and there was a big bang and suddenly the power sector came. No, it evolved. And when you have evolution in space, evolution creates the presence of legacy systems. The evolution creates the presence of dependencies, and that is fundamental in the power sector. It's not the fact, I met somebody who told about creating a SIEM for the OT sector. Creating a SIEM for a normal cyber or a CT sector is something, I think it's a very trivial problem. But for the OT, it takes the game altogether in a different space. You're talking about multiple protocols. You're talking about, DNP3 communication in the SCADA network, DC, RS-232 Modbus in prehistoric, I would use the word protocols. And those compliances have to be there. You have devices like your HMI interfaces, your programmable logic controllers. These devices, again, legacy devices, over a period of time you have increased. But when you have these legacy devices, you increase the attack surface. You make the things much more vulnerable. What is our famous line to protect against it? Sir, we are air-gapped. I'm pretty sure, each of the compliances, each of the regulators, they just say one thing: sir, we are air-gapped. We are not connected into it. But if we are really air-gapped, things happened in Mumbai. If you remember, the Mumbai is fundamentally based on an islanding principle. You have, the Mumbai's infrastructure, especially the power, was supposed to survive. Worst of the things, it's been designed by design. It was created like that. But did it work? That's a question we need to look into. Trust me, if that failure happened, where exactly the problem happened? Again, dependence. One thing triggered another thing triggered another. And this effect is called as, typically, in a mission operations, we call it as cascade effect. And that is something most of us tend to overlook. And that's the fundamental when we're talking about the power sector. If the air gaps did existed, why we had those intrusions? Let me tell you very frankly, each one of you, I'm pretty sure each one would have asked, and NCIPC was here, so they would have asked for this compliance that you are air-gapped and all that. Tell me one thing, without historian, can you work? Give an honest answer. Without historian, which has to touch your OT network and it has to touch your CT network, can you survive? Again, as I said, dependency. And many times in the jingoism of cybersecurity, we do not look into what is called as the perennial fundamental foundations that need to be built when you create out these particular systems. Historian is just one example, formulation to it. Why I am saying all these things? Because at the end of it, you have the metering processes, you have, where the measurements are converted into what is called as financial dividends, bills and all that. You have to be connected in one way or another. So if somebody tells you that I am purely in air gap, koi chahkar bhi andar nahi aa sakta, that's a fallacy. But having said so, now we understand the entirety of the problem. The dependence is there, the legacy systems is there, whether we like it or not. We have to be connected. And, whatever, when we say air gap maintained, and I'm telling you, based on my interactions with a lot of people, in spite of those air gaps and so, things such as historian, things such as, these cross connects or what we call as cross talks do exist. Once you have that, the adversary has to just get one click into that particular transgressing into from the CT space into the OT space, and that's the fundamental aspect we need to look into. Another important aspect, are the air gaps really secure? That's another question I want to ask you. If they would have been really secure, we would not have the incident in the Nintia's nuclear reactor. No? That happened in, just Google it. Most of you would be knowing it. The famous Stuxnet case and all that. Are they really air-gapped? If air gap really worked, we would not have incidents such as what happened in Ukraine. The malware that was there was dark energy. It shouldn't have happened. So these things have happened. That means somewhere down the line, either we are lying to ourselves or we ourselves do not know what is the complexity of the problem and what is the mess we are dealing with. Not entirely of your fault or the CISO's fault, but yes, he's inherited whole lot of legacy system, whole lot of dependencies. And the thing is, if he stops something, the operating manager, he will ask him, you are, disrupting my operations for which the company even exists. And that's the fundamental question that we need to look into. Now, once we understand the propensity of this problem, we need to understand that how we can, solve this problem. I'm not saying that, or neither I'm proposing a solution for it. Trust me, in a 10 minutes talk, you can't give those solutions out. But yes, I can definitely point you to certain right directions where you can, judge, find your own paths. And trust me, each of the sector, when you talk about power, power is huge. You're talking about hydroelectric systems, you're talking about thermal electric systems, you're talking about renewable energy systems, you have in renewable the solar energy plants, you have in renewable the tidal wave, then the tidal plants and all that. There are a whole lot of things that are there. Coal gasification based energy creation systems, generation systems, a whole lot of things are there. It's phenomenally huge. So essentially each of the path that you choose is something that would be very unique to your sector. It will be very unique to your business, and it has to be highly customized. There won't be a single solution that would fit all. If any of the vendor tells you, sir, mera ye solution hai and ye aapka problem solve kar dega, I'm sorry, especially in these niche sectors, it doesn't work. The only thing what you require, yes, the primary stack you have from the same, but you need to do certain customizations. That customization has to be. Now, the problem here is, again, ROI, return on investment. Who bears the cost of these customizations, which specifically each of the sector requires? And that's the fundamental part. Now, if we understand that that is not there, then how we can do it? The best way is embrace open source. Embrace open standards. The first and the critical part are in this particular sector, and leave alone in India, globally, are we looking at specific standards and specific stacks specifically for the various critical information infrastructure? Are we looking at it? The first thing that we need to look into is specifically to create those standards. And it's not that standards for CII, that's a misnomer. You have to create CII specifically in the power sector, specifically in the power sector, the generation or the transmission sector, and then you have to create that. So that needs to be built out. Why creation of those standards are important? Because most of the entrepreneurs, most of the startup guys who are creating their technologies, they have to be these standard compliant. Let me give you a small example that how it works. If you remember, the 2000 year 2000 or 99 and so on, whole lot of new companies, whole lot of, you had the TCS, Infosys, all these emerging out. When they grew into it, most of the US outsourcing business, what they always did a compliance with. What they did? HIPAA compliance. They did, most of the European compliances, they worked onto it. HIPAA was there, COBOL. There were a whole lot of, compliances that they worked onto it. PCI, DSS, whole lot of compliances when it comes to the monetary parts and so on. But essentially, you created your tools customized to those standards and those compliances. You can't create a one bullet answer to all, but yes, with these particular standardizations, things definitely work onto it. So that's the first part that you need to look into. Second part you need to look into is that it's a problem of scales. It's not something that an individual company can work onto it. It is not a problem that an individual company can, even fund it out or work it out. So when you are talking about scales, the best approach is to unite together. So what is the best approach in this scale? Specifically in this particular sector, integrate all the people, the like-minded people and the companies to work out that can we create a custom scenarios, a custom stacks, a custom standards, a custom set of things, and the indigenous, companies relying onto it to build one particular thing. Trust me, whole of the companies are willing to create these products, but they need to have the business. The moment you have some kind of an association or some kind of a conglomeration of these power sector companies that yes, we have the business, this is what is the specific customizations we require. Trust me, the companies would automatically come. The most important aspect whenever we need to address any particular problem, create the ecosystem. I always believe there is a difference between a allopathic medicine and a Ayurvedic medicine. The allopathic medicine essentially cures the symptoms. There is transgress of data bahar leak ho raha hai. Let me put a DLP. I think somebody is inside, some compliances are there. Let me put a seam. Let me find out what is there. I think there is something related to hardening. Oh, let me put CIS benchmarks and all that. What we are doing allopathic medicine. We are just curing the symptoms. But what we really require is Ayurvedic medicine. Is that, rather than the symptoms, essentially you create the fundamental problems who metamorphose themselves into these symptoms. And that those problems are the foundations, the foundational problems, the legacy, addressing to the legacy, the addressing to the dependencies aspect, and addressing to the volume of scales as well as creating an ecosystem where the industry also sees that there is a return on investment. Trust me, if there is just one company of power sector and a cyber security company creating a custom stack, a custom security thing, only for that one company, that company won't survive. Scales don't work. But yes, if you see that if you have built a one common standards and each of the stacks, each of the subdomains of the individual sector, then most of the industry people, they will also understand, including the academia, that these are the compliances I have to comply with, so my software has to be built accordingly. So by design, you need not to even touch, they will do almost 80% of the job. The rest of the customizations, if the industry also, and some kind of an association, for example, the Cybersecurity Association of India or something, they take a lead. They say, yes, these are the 50 companies that are there, which are on more or less the similar business. Those 50 companies, if they work it out, then the companies see what is called as a return on investment. And that will address to the problem of addressing the scale. Trust me, dependency, legacy systems, and the scale, the solution to it in technology do exist. But in order to reach that, you need to create the complete ecosystem. You need to create the standards. You need to create the compliances. You need to create sufficient market share, which for the companies to see that it has a return on investment, to see it and to invest into it, to work onto it. And last of all, you need to, again, as I said, this particular sector, it's not one bullet that will kill all. You need to have specialization, you need to have customization. For crying out loud, in the OT sector, you have, Allen Bradley, Schneider, you have Siemens and all that. Most of these PLCs, at the end of it, they are PLCs only. But why you are going into all these bifurcations? Yeah, because that's what is required as part of your OT operations. So each of your OT operations are very specific, and the customizations are required. I'm sorry if I transgressed into it, but I always believe that rather than just speaking superficially on the problem, we need to understand the problem from its foundations. And the moment you have the foundations right, trust me, rest of the things automatically they fall into the right space, and you have the complete building worked out. So that's my 50 cents to you all. Thank you very much. It was indeed a pleasure talking to you all. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Amit. It was pleasure hearing you, and we'll take your point very seriously. We intend following what you have said. We will try to congregate and try to bring all the people from the industry into one place in power sector. We intend creating working groups so that we can put your vision into reality. Please help us in that. And I now request Professor Goel to honor Amit Sharma. Thank you, Amit. Now, may I request Lieutenant General Dr. A.S. Lamba, retired, Param Vishish Seva Medal, he is our board member. His knowledge is vast on the cybersecurity strategies, and his guidance has been always there for the Cybersecurity Association of India on the strategic matter of cybersecurity. So may I request you to enlighten us?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I profoundly express my gratitude to General Pant, the chairman, Professor Goel, and this team to give me not only an opportunity to be part of this organization, but also to contribute in some ways where I think my experience could help. And we know that cybersecurity is indeed a very vast subject. Amongst the audience and amongst speakers, or for the first bench, I think I may be the most non-technical, but I will give a perspective as truly many of the people who are non-technical would love to see it, so that it amalgamates into something. General Pant pointed out geopolitics, and I've been working for the last 11 years since retirement with the strategic community. And I think this is the key word that has used. What could happen by foreign policy in geopolitics can drastically devastate, with help of AI, the system of diplomacy, foreign policy, and digital diplomacy. That is the impact to which geopolitics had really taken off. And he's made this organization all I saw was in 2009 and 10, as GOC wrote the first doctrine on information warfare, of which cyber was one part. But today, none of these organizations were there. But we did plan strategic operations of strike corps and big formations going 50 kilometers into the enemy territory. But we always wondered, what is it that can impede us? Not physical, not conventional, but unconventional. And one singular fear was something that can disrupt your communication. And I think the subject today is cyber war is what can disrupt a very large scale of conventional operations with the least of effort. In World War II, what United States Air Force did and what they did repeated in Iraq is something that was at a huge cost of collateral damage, including losing their own aircraft. That kind of a destruction today can be done in a parallel manner by cyber warfare. The destruction can be so severe, and it is in a larger perspective, and we've seen it in the Russian war in Ukraine. We've seen it across all domains, and we also know our neighbors have a very phenomenal strength. We have the Chinese solar wind, which has done a lot of devastation. We have the North Korean agencies, which have struck Kundankulam atomic nuclear plant, generation plant, which is a part of the discussion today, that such critical hubs of power, like the Kundankulam nuclear facility, was targeted by North Korea to disrupt the movement. And if that is the extent that North Korea can do, China has much higher levels of engagement and power. And I also say this, I should have said at the end, that the power of cyber war is yet to be tested. Every intelligent power, whether it's Russia or it's in China or it is India today or the United States, how do you surprise the enemy? Not by launching conventional forces, not by doing something that is already in thought process and you only adapt a different step. But you do it when you radically spring something different that can happen. And I think this is the domain that they can really do. China has shown its capability on many countries. Russia has shown it clearly in Ukraine, struck Kyiv, not only now, but 2015. And now, of course, you all know that east of Ukraine was blinded. The power sector, whatever I'm going to say, is in contextualizing. And I, in my part, will briefly contextualize the threat to power and energy sector in a few more minutes as it relates in a military perspective. While we know that the grid is there to give life and sustainability to the whole nation because it survives on connectivity, interdependence of sectors, and that's how comprehensive power comes about. But I think I'll only touch the part that if the grids are impacted, the military will be the most to suffer. And I think that's important. You know, somewhere the electricity going on 3 days or something else happening today is not relevant. The attacks that are there in Ukraine, and I said 2 instances, I've told you the Chinese solar winds, I've recounted Kundankulam, but if you go down to NATO, how they are being attacked by the Russians, how Russia has done geopolitics when General Pant mentioned, and I think that's the key word today, more than even combat and operations. TV5 Monday, the French institution, media institution, was struck by a cyber virus. And what it posted was ISIS propaganda. Russia was suspected, but Russia did it through another country probably. The friction between France and Russia went to an unprecedented level. And I think that are the fallout so severe can be. That means if you work out geopolitics and say that my relations with X country are going this way, it could be going very, very awry if somebody suspects a cyber attack, which is not done by your neighbor or suspects a friend. International relations can really suffer. So what we have heard so far is, as users of at a fairly macro level, we see the security, the safety of operations coming back stronger by such organizations. The kind of introductions and the organizations we have heard today tells us that this is a comprehensive effort that will go a long way to help facilitate what operations and what strategy we wish to disseminate. Third thing, the impact on the army. One is, while there are 2 sets of, 2 elements, 2 aspects. One is the direct systems that depend upon power and energy grids. And these are, first, the forward battlefield installations. Many of them, particularly of the Air Force and the Army, have huge radars which may be in the operational to strategic range. These have to operate on big supply grids. Even if they have their own, that will be a small stop gap arrangement. So you look at the deployment of the military systems in the strategic range, that means beyond 60, 70 kilometers, they are huge, they cannot be sustained. 2, the production facilities. Our entire industry and the production today depends upon electricity, energy, and other renewables. If any impact is done on this, on the energy and power grids, those facilities will slow down. The theory of short, intense wars came in for a very brief period, perhaps between 48 and I think it's already over. With Ukraine running its 2nd year, and with Hamas, a terrorist organization capable of handling a country like Israel for the 2nd month, tells you that no longer the wars will be long-term. And if you see this dimension, I made my 2nd point, that to have an enduring defense production capability, you need to have guaranteed assured power grid systems, which means you have them, but what is now I'm reiterating is they need to be secure from any attack by the enemy. Yeah, we know that it is never will it be so secure, but there will be levels of security. And I'm re-emphasizing, fully confident that what has been spoken this morning and what is under the dynamic leadership of General Pant and General Nair and the other organizations put together, this is happening already. And if these 2 elements are clear, the impact of any disruptions in power sector on the defense in the long term are should be well understood. So I think there is an element. And if you come right to the battlefield in front, autonomous weapon systems today, precision weapon systems today, will have to be autonomous in carrying. For example, a drone that's got to do a 6-hour round. It's got to have its own system in it. The software is something that will be attacked by the cyber. We've done this analysis some places. I've done it for the last 2 to 3 years as to seeing how it's going to affect us. Drones, you can say it can fly, there are precision munitions which can go over long periods of time. There are hypersonic missiles today, but their exposures and software is not very easily destructible. But should we be able to guess, to identify the priorities of cyber war, I think we are on our way to securing national security. I mean, my fundamental feeling is you may have the wherewithal of fighting a big war like the 71. You may have I will not hesitate to say in my assessment, China and India are on the brink of war every day, if not yesterday. Let not the muddle of the world belie this truth that China is, you see the geopolitics, he has diverted everyone. He's taken the US first towards Taiwan. He's pulled them into South China Sea. China has provoked Iran, in turn Hamas, to make sure that the aircraft carriers have moved into the Persian Gulf of the United States. So we've seen all this, and I think it'll be right for me to just reiterate in whatever little way I did. We have this challenge, a military perspective. We could go endlessly on this, but for me to stop here, because the time doesn't permit, it's an excellent organization, and I think with the background that General Pant has himself, I think he's best placed to understand warfare and what he's trying to do. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
I'll speak.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, sir, for your guidance, and we'll take all the points. And you pointed out very rightly that in the cyber warfare, the enemy could be sitting today into the system, waiting for the appropriate time to carry out the attack. The back doors will be there, and they are quite taking no further action. Now, with this, I request Professor Goel, sir, to facilitate General Marg. Thank you. Now we have Professor Gurunath Gurala from Indian Institute of Science. Professor Gurunath Gurala is Associate Professor in Department of Electrical Engineering in Institute of Science. After his initial studies of BTech and MTech, he did his PhD from there in 2010. He is convener of Power Grid Center of Excellence, FSID, IISc, funded by Power Grid Corporation of India Limited. His research interests include cyber physical systems modeling in the smart grid, development of realistic testbed for power systems operation, power system stability, grid integration of renewable, and all complete spectrum. I request him to help us, and I further request him that please stick to the time of 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. And first of all, I would like to start with a salute to all the power system operators who have been making our lives to be very, very glowing every day. So the reason I want to do that is that we have gone through a lot of situations and we have never thought about how our lights were still on even during the COVID, right? So today we are talking about one thing called cybersecurity, and I want to give some of my perspectives. And let me tell you that my knowledge is at picoscales, and I'm sure 99% of the power engineers who are handling the grid about cybersecurity also have a knowledge of picoscales, but they are capable of handling the gigascale power grid, which the entire nation is actually today. And let me also tell you that our power grid has a history that the 2012 blackout is the largest blackout in the entire world, but it is the fastest recovered blackout too in the entire world. So that's why I want to salute to the power grid operators of our country, and it's my traditional namaste to all of them. Okay, so why do I want to do this? If you ask a power grid engineer and tell that cyber security, he may be a picoscale person who doesn't have any knowledge. But if you tell him security, he's the best person who knows how to handle security in the grid, because he's making billions of people's lives today running with heads up in the entire world. The sole reason is our strong power grid, okay? So with that note, let me tell you, I am coming from Indian Institute of Science, and I'm the convener of Power Grid Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity. It is just a baby born between Power Grid Corporation of India Limited and Indian Institute of Science in October 2022. And we are here to tell why we started this, okay? So, sorry, this is not moving. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to talk about power grid by default is designed for reliability. No systems in power grid operate without reliability. And adequacy and security are the prime important pillars, and every power engineer knows how to handle it. What are those? Two things: adequacy and sudden changes, even some of the unforeseen contingencies, and how do you handle? So power grid people know, power operators know. So first, our responsibility is to tell them, you are equipped with arms to handle anything that happens. First, make the operators to be confident that cybersecurity is just another security for your grid, and make them first confident so that they can take critical decisions if something happens without any fear. I think this is my urge to everyone. Don't bombard them with fears of security, because they know how to handle security. The second point I want to make, where it is? Yeah. Our goal is to make it economic, and our goal is to make consumer demand very well satisfied. But what we do for this, and every power engineers know all the terms here that we have. Is there a security in this anywhere? But security is what is driving all these things that you are doing. Expansion planning, maintenance scheduling, and you do whole lot of studies just to make sure that 15 minutes intervals to 1 day, you have to operate your system reliably. Think about the timestamps they are operating, 15 minutes to 1 day. And they do whole lot of stuff. They have worth of developing most secure algorithms in the world. And we have systems that we have developed to monitor, and these are the first systems which are the complex cyber physical systems in the world. And we have systems which are actually capable of working at microseconds levels, nanoseconds levels to protect the grids. Those are nothing but your protective relays, and which are engineered systems by the power engineers, and they know how to protect the grid. Okay? And we have AMCs and all that stuff which are actually enabling how to make sure that the system is under control. So can you tell me any system in the world which is as complex as this and still 99% available and serving the entire system? So don't underestimate the power grid operators' abilities today. Okay, and we do have opened up for markets. And today the question you are talking about is operational technology. What is operational technology? The technology which is allowing you to make sure your system operates from the milliseconds to a day, This is what is operational technology. And this is what every power engineer is actually learn how to do it. So what we have a controller who actually does the entire system operation, and he has automated systems which are recently implemented, AGCs, which are the ones which doesn't have an operator in loop, but almost every other operation has an operator in loop, which percolates from the national to the load centers to the states and different stakeholders across the systems. And one important thing that we need to notice is that in this entire chain of systems, there are people at different technology readiness levels. Not that the NLDCs and SLDCs have the same technology that the SLDCs have. So there is a technology gap across the entire vertical that we need to look into if at all we want to talk about what we can do. And one important thing you notice is that everybody talks about controlling from the operators to the grid, but are there autonomous systems in the grid? 90% of the systems are autonomous in the grid. The productive systems with 24/7 operate, they are not judged by anybody. They take their own decisions. And that's what you are seeing in the middle. And that is the only place where you have 90% of your cyber assets. And I'm talking about substations, which are eyes, ears, and hands of the operator. And only through this you achieve the entire 90% of the system. And believe me, if you just look at this particular slide, it connects everything from the generation to the substations to the loads. And this happens only because of something called as substations, and which is unmanned today, but most reliable systems which are operating. And which is what you are using as the system level to actually control, right? So operational technology is essentially talking about the top, most of the times, whatever systems that we have gone to, but it actually completely forgets about the eyes, ears, and hands of the entire power grid, which are substations. And if you look at, it has both cyber and physical assets, which basically constitute 90% of the systems. Okay, so now power system automation control, if you just talk about, it has several layers and how it has actually improved. So if you first look at it, the first goal was actually to look at generation and load. That was our perfect, I think up to 90s we are into that stage and we did it. But the next thing we wanted to have is to make sure that we have profits and at the same time increase the security of the power systems. And that's where the automation and switchgear, there's a lot of research gone into and they have improved. Okay, so power system security was very important. Of course, some profits are also important, but these are manpower intense systems and you want to make more profits out of it. That's when we went to the automation at the bay level. And automation and power system security, which has increased the profits. And then we went to the next level for more and more profits and more security, of course. The most important thing is the security because it's a geographically distributed system. And now we are also looking at automating certain small things, which I'm not sure whether they are absolutely important, but we can take a judgment on it. So now today, if you look at it, these security measures which we have taken, all that we do with computer systems, and now they become threat as what is called as risk of cyber security. And now this is actually posing something called a security threat for the actual power engineers. But does the power engineers has to really worry about it is something that we need to think about. Okay, so security, the bottom line is to make sure that it's a strong culture in power grid. And this culture actually come up with the adoption of computers and technologies and it poses now as a cyber threat. But can we actually treat this as a regular security issue and empower our operators until we have the right solutions that we can actually look into? So few things that I can actually talk about is the 99% of the operators are blind with respect to any of the technologies that you are talking about. They're not equipped with anything that they can do with it. Only thing they know is how to operate. It's like a driver who knows how to operate the car, but he doesn't know how to repair the car. So this is the problem we are facing with. We are talking about systems which are blind to the operators who are running the systems. And that's where we also have to pay a lot of attention. That's what is my perspective from the academician. Right? So the last point that I want to mention is that the OT technologies are like tortoise because their adoption rates are slower and they cannot penetrate as you penetrate in the case of IT because of the volumes. The markets are not small, not bigger, and the volumes are small. So you have to make sure that that cannot be addressed in real future. And IT technologies are horses, they can run faster. So anything that is applicable to IT, assume that it cannot be applicable to OT. This is something which we need to be very careful. And please use different lenses for OT as well as IT. So with this, let me tell you that to address these challenges, so with the leadership of the CMD of Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, we have started this Power Grid Center of Excellence, and we are exclusively looking at the OT technologies from the hardware point of view, from the security of all the communications point of view. How do we actually empower the operators to at least do certain things by themselves? So these are the aspects at which the Cybersecurity Center is being established. So with this, I will stop, and the people associated with it is Tyagiji, Subir Sen, and the other people, Anand Shankar and Abhishek. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It was indeed pleasure listening to you. And of course, the power sector Center of Excellence will bring out the technologies, people, processes accordingly. We thank and we request now Professor Goyal to honor Professor Gurnath. Thank you very much. We have small change, so we have to adjust accordingly. We have with us now Advocate Karnika Seth, a Supreme Court renowned lawyer. She is internationally renowned for cyber laws, IP and media laws, and is practicing in Supreme Court for last 22 years. And she is legal advisor to Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Defense Ministry, and she is part of multiple working groups within the government. She is also associated with many associations, including FICCI, CISAI, and us, of course. And she is awardee of multiple awards by Chief Justice, and you name it, she got the award. And I request her to enlighten us on the subject of importance of privacy in the power sector.
At the outset, I'd like to thank Professor Goyal, Lieutenant General Pant, Lieutenant General Nair, Amit Sharma ji who's already spoken today, and I think Rakesh Maheshwari, he's also there. Rakesh Maheshwari is, I've worked with him also on multiple national projects, and I must also thank Commander Saini, who has taken, the initiative to address this whole conference. Organizing this conference of this, I would say, stake is not something which is, it requires a lot of time, commitment, energy. The entire, I would say the spearheadship of Lieutenant General Pant, this was possible. And Professor Goyal is very, I would say that he's very, very instrumental in not only organizing events like or discussions like these, which will have an impact in the entire country, but the subjects that we talk about today will create the landscape for what we will witness in the country and how we will be leading the whole not only the nation, but this is a power sector which is a core sector of the critical information infrastructure of the country. So that will be actually at the I would say, the center stage of a lot of changes which will be replicated across various industries. So that's the relevance of having this power sector discussion in terms of cybersecurity, defense. It plays a very, very pivotal role. So I'm very glad that we have had this congregation today under this cybersecurity conference, and we are talking about a very crucial aspect of cybersecurity and how especially emerging technologies, the changing regulatory landscape will impact this power sector, and what contributions we can make. What changes, what are the steps, the ready to take steps which will put the entire emphasis in the right direction, progressive direction. So with this, I just want to focus on one prime area at this point. The way evolution of IT has led in the country, like last 20 years, we've seen the 23 years, rather, this legislation of our IT Act is year 2000. So since then, we've had various changes in the whole way in which defense specifically, has been a focus point of discussion, because there are a lot of attacks which have happened, whether through malware or otherwise in the PII, like I would say the critical infrastructure, the hacking of the systems, not only the private personal computers or corporations, agencies, but state governments, and the attacks on public infrastructure have been creating havoc. So whether it's Estonia or it's multiple attacks of Stuxnet on India, or even otherwise on the power sector, there have been many, many examples one can actually see. Ukraine is definitely one of the clear examples we have recently seen, and this is been addressed in our law. It's not that we don't have a section. We have a section 66F which talks about cyber terrorism and any attacks on the critical infrastructure of the country. They have a punishment of almost like up to life imprisonment. That is the strictness of the law. However, the challenges is the technical aspect, from where an attack has happened, from where it has actually originated, becomes a problem. Because of the onion routing, there are lots of dark web, there is Tor, there are camouflaging techniques through software, or multiple proxy servers operating across the world, and that becomes a question mark. How do you enforce the law? So if some attack has happened, say from China or Russia, how do you actually find out from where this has happened? So, and then enforcing the law. We don't have a uniform convention that India is a signatory to. So we will appreciate that electronic evidence, getting that electronic evidence, doing the investigations for all law enforcement bodies is very difficult. Because if we don't have the electronic trail, then how do we go about investigating and prosecuting a particular crime from where an attack has happened? So those are the issues which we need to address. Immediate response time. We've just had 70B guidelines from the Ministry of IT, wherein within 6 hours of a breach happening and you coming to know of the breach, you have to report it to the CERT. Now, how effectively this can be actually implemented is, first of all, awareness. And do we have the right technology in place? We may have DLPs, data loss prevention software, intrusion detection systems in place. Do we know this attack has happened? That is, the first thing. Secondly, addressing these critical, I would say, attacks on infrastructure require this, convention of this scale. So convention on cybercrime becomes very important because most of these attacks are trans-border. And looking at the cyber warfare and the way it has, taken, I would say, the world by storm. Sometimes we've seen multiple jurisdictions being affected. There have been blackouts in the power sector as well. So we know the relevance and the importance of that, and therefore, from the legal standpoint also, we need to take effective steps. There is already a discussion at the UN level. I think India has not signed the EU convention so far, but we are hoping that something will take shape in the UN level. Secondly, looking at the current landscape of DPDP now, that we have on the 11th of August, we've had a new act this year, presidential assent to the Digital Data Protection Bill. How this evolved, you would have all witnessed this, from the Aadhaar judgment to the Justice K. Puttaswamy case, where the 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court of India held that right to privacy is a fundamental right of every citizen of India. Now, why this is important? Not only it's important on a general level for every citizen of India, but for the power sector. There are smart meters going to be used today. We are already using them. There will be a lot of sensitive information which will flow. It will be personal identifiable information. How much is the usage of a particular, say on a minute-to-minute basis, this usage of electricity or power is actually being sent. That data is going to be sent. So how do we protect that data? Looking at GDPR, for instance, the General Data Protection Directive. Now, this directive has now become the regulations of GDPR, which are applicable not only in Europe, but they will be also applicable to in those cases where processing of their data is happening in another country, for instance. So therefore, we have to look at the norms, sometimes multi-jurisdictional norms of GDPR, and even if it is India, then yes, DPDP Act. So looking at that, the personal identifiable information, there could be a breach of privacy if the technical organizational measures which are prescribed by the law are not adhered to. Now, what those technical operational measures will be, we've yet to see from the regulations which will be passed by the government. But at this point, we have, for example, 27001 ISO certification, which is one of the deemed standards. Now, that is one of the standards, but it may be that this, there would be other requirements which will flow from the, Act. For example, use of encryption, use of anonymization, use of pseudonymization. Now, those are certain techniques which are accepted world over, like, globally. Now, if that is the case, maybe our regulations will also, imbibe those principles, and they will have to, because those are some standard accepted technical measures which are taken. So with that, the third challenge, I would just drive this, discussion to the direction that the third challenge is that AI. Now, we are talking about times of AI and metaverse. We still have a regulation to come into place. The high-risk systems will have to be regulated. We have statements by, from the Ministry of IT also, that the new act which we are trying to build, the Digital India Act, will have, those high-risk systems regulated. So whether the middle risk systems or the low-risk systems will be regulated, or there will be a full liberty given to its usage, we have yet to see. But from whatever has, flown in the public domain and otherwise, it's that the high-risk systems only will be regulated. The best part about DPDP is that there is a exemption. So it's not always that the consent of a user will be needed, but wherever it is threat to nation, national defense, integrity of a nation, or friendly relations with other states, or whether there's serious flood, disaster, if that kind of information, which is personal information, is there and the government is trying to do something for the sake of public interest, then that consent requirement is waived, it's exempted. So that is a very good thing about DPDP, because that not only preserves the privacy of individuals where it needs to, but also that it doesn't make it as a hurdle where there is a public interest involved and the government needs to do something for the citizens. So with that, I think I'll say that, power sector, defense, we worked very closely with the areas, but cyber security is a very, very prime, I would say, area where we need a good regulation. Now to look at emerging technologies and changing geopolitics requires this. It's indispensable, something that we really need to work on together, and it will require a multi-pronged approach. And the conference of today is definitely an apt example that really needs meeting of the right minds together. So thank you for inviting me to be here amongst you all. And it's a pleasure to be on this forum, and I'd like to interact with you also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Because we are taking comprehensive view on the cyber security, so we expect a personal data protection, Digital Personal Data Protection Act has to is already in force. The regulation will come in next few months. Now, I think our next speaker going to brief on this in much more depth and detail. But we fully accept that the power sector need to be conscious of it, because they are, after all, holding one of the highest number of the personal data in the telecom sector. Telecom sector and power sector are the PII holders of the country. So that's very important. Now I request Professor Goel to honor Advocate Karnika Seth ji, and thank you to them. Sorry. So our next speaker is Shri Rakesh Maheshwari ji. He's been in the business of law framing, and he was the former senior director and group coordinator of cyber laws and data governance. He knows inside story, and I hope today he'll reveal what will happen to the Digital India Act, and if the Cyber Security Act also will come about. I do not know how much he is going to reveal today, but I request him to guide us, please.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, so good afternoon. I am in fact an odd man out as of date. I had been dealing in the Ministry of Electronics and IT on the issues relating to cyber laws, interface between the ministry and the CISO as GC of Group Coordinator for CISRT in, and also with data governance activity, which as of today has already culminated into the Digital Data Protection Act, and for which Madam talked about the importance of understanding the personally identifiable information and its security. So I'll just be talking and sharing, in fact, my thoughts on few of these aspects. One, the Digital Data Protection Act is a reality, and it requires, in fact, all organizations, whoever is collecting, whoever is processing the personal data, to maintain its security. In the context of power sector, particularly those organizations which are involved in distribution, the last mile distribution is where a lot of personal data is actually being collected and is being processed and is being outsourced also. So the law very clearly says that it has to be consent based. Of course, here in any case, me or all of us as consumers approach to the distribution agency. So per se, while the personal data, I mean, it is the need for both the sides. The fact is that there has to be a clearly defined privacy policy, a consent framework, a notice and consent framework as to what information is being collected, for what purpose it is being collected, for how long it is going to be stored, and with whom it is going to be shared. Now, these are some of the aspects, I believe, because the nature of distribution of, I'll say, the electric supply is prima facie the same across the country. And to that extent, maybe that's where my proposition is, and I can be completely wrong. The Central Electricity Authority, which is in a way the regulator in the power sector, can come up with certain guidelines as to what data needs to be collected, and more importantly, how long a particular kind of personal information should be stored. So like RBI has mandated that KYC, for example, if the account is to be closed, for how long it is to be maintained, For hospitals also, for how long the patient data is to be stored. In IT intermediary rules, we had mentioned, for example, 6 months is the amount of, is the period for which the personal data is to be stored after the account has been deleted or account has been withdrawn. For example, CIRT, Computer Emergency Response Team India, has mentioned that the period for maintenance of logs is for 6 months, and particularly for certain specific kind of industry, including VPNs, including cloud service providers, including virtual asset service providers, that they have mentioned the logs to be kept for 5 years. So how long should the logs be, personal data should be kept for the people who are the consumers of the distribution companies? So as long as, of course, the relationship remains, it remains, but after the relationship, most likely, of course, the relationship remains, but the way it is to be shared, and the fact is that the law also provides for seeking information. So as citizen, we should be able to seek information as to what my personal information is being held by the distribution company or maybe by the other power sector companies, most likely distribution again. So the law empowers you means citizen, to be able to seek information from anybody, any organization, and to that extent, the power distribution companies now will in addition to dealing with the grievances of the nature of power, will also may have to deal with the grievances relating to the personal information, the correction of personal information, withdrawing of personal information, erasure of personal information, and they need to be aware for how long it is to be stored. So that was my part 1 of the talk. The second, once again, it comes from the heart, and that's where you have many CIRTs. I understand maybe 4 CSIRTs or 6? By now 6 CSIRTs. 6 will come up. See, the CIRT direction clearly mentions, as Madam mentioned, that any cybersecurity incident happens, it has to be reported to the national CIRT. Now, dealing with generation, dealing with hydro generation, dealing with thermal generation, dealing with distribution, you have come up with already 4 CIRTs, you are already talking of 6 CIRTs being there, because the regulator will, I'm sure, will definitely require this power CERT or power CERT to be also informed of the security incident. By law, you have to inform the CERT. Then, of course, in case you have gone in for maybe insurance, in any case, you may have a headquarter, you may also have to inform the regulators. So please think of the scenario. If something goes wrong, if some cyber security incident happens, so while you are all working on the cyber crisis management plans and everything, the fact is that you have multiple stakeholders to report. It is in this connection that CERT had come out with a certain guidance document as to how CERT versus the sectoral CERTs should really operate. In my view, unless the scenario is really too different, if we can manage with one single nodal, the national CERT, why can't we really manage with one CERT for the power sector? There can be nuances, there can be different technologies, there can be different issues, but I'm sure there can be, because of the problem of multiple reporting, in my opinion, we should reconsider and try to have minimum CSIRTs as much as possible. 1. 2, must devise. I'm sure there must already be a way of how CSIRTs, I normally say CSIRTs, to have a difference between CERT and the sectoral CERTs, as to how these sectoral CERTs are going to work in harmony with national CERT, which is CERT. So once again, as I mentioned, from an administrative perspective, you can still be different, but from a technical perspective, you have to be one, and because the incidents have to be resolved as soon as possible, a mechanism must be worked out. And this is where, it's not only CERT and power CERTs, it is CERT versus financial CERT, which is as of today housed within CERT. It is CERT versus army CERT or defense CERTs, CERT with railway CERT, certain with many other certs, sectoral certs, and in fact state level CSIRTs also, which are coming up. So some mechanism of how these certs should be really operating, where exactly the person should be responding, and how exactly the whole incident should be managed, while also being aware of how many incidents in the country have taken place, should be the issue. Lastly, I mean, once again, I revert back to the DPDP, and a lot of data, particularly from the distribution side, is shared because by those people who are maybe say taking readings, maybe by those people who are installing meters, because the information has to be passed on to them. So while there is no, I mean, limitation in the law that it should not be, but the law very clearly puts the responsibility on the data fiduciary, which in this case is the distribution agency, distribution organization, to ensure that any data, any personal data which is passed on to the vendors is duly safeguarded. And when the vendor is collecting this information is directly passed on to the network of the distribution agency. The contractual aspects, the capacity building aspects have to be ensured, because the security of this personal data is now a mandate under the law. It is no longer just a business issue, it's also a compliance issue, which therefore has to be adhered to. With this, I like to thank you the organizers, and thanks a lot.
So thank you, Maheshwariji. I'm your criminal.
No.
Because, why I say so? Because it was me in 2003 recommended that we should have 21 sectoral certs and 30 state certs. Now you may look at differently, but what I wanted is that the certain is like AIMS. We should have up to the primary health center level so that everybody is reachable. Right now, certain is too huge, too distance away from the common man, far away. To reach to the each and every individual, that's what my vision was at that point of time. And apparently now is coming, requirement is that you need to either make this cert at least 50,000, 10,000 people sitting. You can have that.
Yeah, so my point is, let the incident be reported at one point, and thereafter, naturally, as the power sectoral certs, you are near to the audience, you are near to your customers, you are near to the problem, you understand the technology nuances much, much better. However, once again, because it's not just the issue of power certs, the issues are cross-sectoral. And that's where the importance of informing to one single point and let that point take care of where it should go, rather than going to multiple points, because nobody wants to tell to the, I mean, you are in a very fiduciary kind of a relationship, you tell to your doctor as to what your problem is. And particularly in case of privacy breach, you don't even want to know anybody to know about it. Other than
So Raj, thank you very much. I now request Professor Goyal to honor Rakesh Maheshwariji. And
by the way, I'm also a member of this organization. So
yes,
Maheshwari is a board member of
he is board member also. Thank you. Thank you. Now we will have Dr. Prabhakaran P., Director of InSpark Solution Private Limited. He is a co-founder of this organization. He's a deep technology company which is helping our power sector. And he is not just simple technologist, but he is CISSP, CISA, and working on this cybersecurity field from technology perspective for almost more than 15 years, I think. Yeah. 30 years now. 30 years, yep. 30 years is working on this subject. So I request him to come here and provide us vision on the subject of actual how whole thing is happening on the ground level. Please.
Thank you for the kind introduction, sir. Luminaries here, my well-wishers are here. Most of my well-wishers are here today, and they have spoken also. And when I say well-wishers, thank you. So they are the one who inspired me to start the company, because I was, after my stint at the World Bank and Verisign and other places where I helped architect critical infrastructure, I was more focused on the research and solving the problems of the big data for the government sector. And it was several luminaries here and previous defense secretaries like Ajay Kumar sir and others who said, start the company, India needs a company. So that being said, again, the previous respected speakers, they have given all the insights on the importance of power sector and various aspects. One interesting thing is, again, it's a common thing, but while the head is the most important part in the human body, entire human body, not only the biggest is the brain, and of course, the most of the sensory perception, your eyes and your ears and your mouth, tongue, but still you only think of your head only when you have a headache. Otherwise, you don't even think. Similarly, on the power sector, because it is running 24/7, you don't think about it. You don't pay, at least from a common man's point of view. People who work in the power sector, of course, they need to be thinking 24/7, but the common man, doesn't think. So here, I'm going to touch briefly on, while this may seem basic, but still, the truth is, whatever you talk, Stuxnet to whatever attack you talk, the APTs, cyber war, again, you have to go back to basics because the answers lie with the basics. Why do they want to attack? Who is going to attack? So that's why dwelling on the basics, I thought it's very, very important. Okay, so while it is good that there are a lot of security companies and the products, but as a practitioner or as an end user, which product you would choose? How do you know this is what you require? Because everybody, whether sales or marketing, everybody comes and says, okay, I solved this problem. Which by the time, even if you do a POC of one product per day, which is impossible, at least you need at least three months to 6 months if you have to really evaluate a product, you will spend at least a few years. There are, because several thousand products claiming to do, it's not bad, I don't demean the products, there are enough products out there, but how do you select, what do you need? So it's very complex. One second. Where is it? Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah. So what do we need? The most important thing is a deep security awareness. While when we say awareness, it's not just awareness but in terms of, okay, the basics of cybersecurity, you don't click the link, don't click the email. No, we are talking much beyond. From the lowest of a staff, why? When I say lowest, in terms of the functions, to the board, everybody needs to have a deep technical awareness. For example, why lowest staff? For example, this is a cyber physical system. Even a person who serves tea could be given a small equipment to be put in somewhere. Or it can be given in the gift bag, or it can be given as a USB drive. You go to security conference, you can be given a free USB drive, and you take back, what do? You put it somewhere. That is enough. So it has to be from the lowest staff. And why board management? They may not sit in front of the computers, but they need to understand the implications of the cybersecurity. They need to know how deep the impact can be. The previous respected speaker, sir, has mentioned that there are several actors who has not done the attack because they wait for the right moment. Because if you do attack every day, you are going to find out how you do it. So it is not going to be, you use weapon only during war. So it is very simple, the same methodology. Just because everything is running fine doesn't mean that it is safe. And of course, with all the respect to the power sector team, with the excellent work, hard work, still we have a lot of unknowns. So that is why the awareness has to be there for everybody. And then in addition to the threat intelligence provided by the companies, CISOs, and all the vendors, and your own research team, you also need to have some behavioral based. I'm not, again, nowadays the word AI and ML is being misused everywhere. You go anywhere, okay, we have an AI ML powered thing. Okay, what does it do? You go to the deeper level and it can definitely protect some, but it cannot protect all. So that's not a silver bullet. And the other thing is zero blind spot. So when we say, okay, I have taken all my email system, okay, that is not enough. I have taken my OT systems, every single aspect, because again, it's a cyber physical system, whether it's your SCADA or even your simple internet facing systems has to be taken care. If you have, let's say your face measurement unit, which is nowhere connected to this, if you don't have the visibility, there is a blind spot. Somebody will attack that. For you, you have to protect 100% everything. For the attacker, out of thousands of things, you need to compromise just one. So again, zero visibility has to be there. And you need to be able to see, there was a discussion about CIRT and the SOC by the power grid. In the end, you need to have the end-to-end visibility, 24/7 and all at your fingertip. Then the other thing is, it's easier to say, continuous vulnerability and patch assessment and mitigation. Especially when I say it's easier to say, it is a must, but on the power sector, when you talk to power sector, you will have equipment running for 15 years, 20 years, out of warranty, that's no longer in production, but you cannot just replace. As a computer, you cannot just patch and reboot. You just cannot do that. Some of the vendors may not be there. Some of the Siemens or Allen, those models are outdated for 10 or 20 years. So how do you patch? At least you should have the mitigation plan. You should have a quarantine plan. You should thoroughly research on how do you address this. As a proactive measure, of course, in the future, we should work with those manufacturers that even though this is for 5-year support warranty, you need to extend it to 20 years with certain clause for the security patches. Again, we can have a separate discussion on that. And of course, continuous, when I say continuous, it is 24/7. Yet new device is introduced, instantly the SOC has to know. A new protocol has been introduced, SOC has to know. A new services has been introduced, SOC has to know. So there has to be 24/7. Okay, then we should also have a zero trust. Now, this is also again a buzzword. It is very simple. You don't trust anything. You have to combine with the layer defense. You can't say, okay, zero trust, I'm having two-factor authentication, everything is done. No, it is not done. Again, everything has to be perfect, before we call it, okay, zero trust. Configuration hardening. Many a time we do audit. Most of the time, as one of the previous speakers said, okay, I'm having this, PCI DSS to all this auditing I have done, big auditing companies, but even then, you have to spend time in your configuration management and periodically have a process where you cannot make a mistake. Again, we need to have, of course, real-time threat intelligence. Okay, the other thing is overwhelming. Now, as and when we are introducing a lot of new devices and technologies, it is going to be overwhelming. Again, in a training, you need to have a trained people. Some of you might say, I don't have a budget, or the leadership may not allow hiring 500 people. So how do you do that? We outsource it to our IT vendor, or we outsource it to our system integrator. We need to make sure the system integrator has the necessary quality knowledge to be able to tackle this. Otherwise, it's going to be a difficult one. The other point is we need to have a personalized security architecture and the solution. The reason I say this is nowadays we have companies, either they are $1 billion company or I have deployed the products across the globe. That doesn't still, it's very simple. You have a warplane, but all you may need for your situation is a good soldier with all the necessary equipment. So you need to personalize it. So you cannot take a global solution and put it to secure your network. So that is important. Again, this is, it's a common thing. I just want to touch upon the conversation with Rakesh Maheshwari sir and the other sir. Sir, while there can be a difference, my personal view, there can be a difference, but you need a place where you have the visibility of every incident, every log. You can say, no, the data is huge. For example, PMU itself is generating few petabytes of data, but you need to have, if you need to protect, you need to have. Again, while I said, we have been doing a lot of work for Government of India, mainly building a very large big data analytics platform. With that experience, we have come out with a few products. We have been doing it for the past 14 plus years. And maybe our platform is one of the largest in India, possibly in Asia also, one of the largest. It takes several petabytes of data per day, with that experience, we have carved out certain products where we have taken a very conscious decision that we will address the visibility issue and the operations issue of any enterprise, especially so with the critical sector. And one more thing which we would like to emphasize is because this is made for India, we didn't just take one random product and went to the market. We are here to sit with our customers and understand their difficulties, understand their personalized need, and customize them without charging any extra cost. Because we feel that more than saying I'm a $1 billion company or more than saying I have 100,000 customers, it is important to say I have a few hundred customers who are 100% happy, who feel that they are secure. With that, I thank everybody. Thank you, sir. Thank you for providing this opportunity. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure listening to you, and we are very happy that you have come here and supported us. He is the primary sponsor also for us in today's event. I request Professor Goyal to honor him. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mukesh here? Yep. So we could not have MAKP Singh ji here because of his commitment. So he is nominated his most able person to speak for very quick overview of what's happening. I request Mukesh Kumar. He is senior manager with CSIRT, which is there. Actually, that's the correction. The order of CEA says 5-6 certs, but now reality is there's only one CSIRT and others are CISOs who are controlling. That's the reality on ground. And with the passage of time, will change. I request him to, brief us what MAKP Singh wanted to tell us. Please.
So thank you, everyone. I'm glad and honored today to address you on behalf of CISO Ministry of Power, MAKP Singh sir. And I am stand here to highlight the important initiative related to cybersecurity that has been taken, that is in plan and being taken in power sectors. So I will be limiting myself to 5 important initiatives that will be addressing the major area of concerns. And the first one will be cybersecurity guideline that has been released by CA in October 2021. Then second will be draft cybersecurity regulation that is under plan, and it will be coming soon. Then there is supply chain related initiative like trusted vendor system and model contractual clauses that has the provision that will be incorporated during procurement phase. Then there is notification of CSAT power that has been done by Ministry of Power. Then we have initiative related to legacy system management. That is another major area of concerns for us. So our commitment to fortify the security posture of critical power sector infrastructure is exemplified by the launch of CA cybersecurity guidelines in October 2021 that has 14 articles covering the complete domains of cybersecurity. And by adopting this guideline, we have developed a comprehensive cybersecurity framework that we are following with each power sector utility. And these frameworks include formation of dedicated information security division in all power sector utilities, then periodic cybersecurity audit of IT and OT infra, and that too by certain impaneled cybersecurity auditors. Then identification of CII that we are doing with in coordination of NCIPC. Then we are formulating cyber crisis management plan for all utility in all subsectors, and we are involving CERT India for this exercise. Then anticipating the need for stringent cybersecurity, we are diligently working on upcoming cybersecurity regulations. These regulations will mandate the standards for all cybersecurity practices to all the power sector utilities that will be applicable for OEM, OES, system integrator, and all the major stakeholders that are working in power sectors. These regulations will mandate the standards for cybersecurity practices, providing a clear roadmap for utilities. We understand that regulations compliance is paramount in fostering a cybersecurity environment, and this forthcoming regulation will play a pivotal role in achieving this. Another major area of concern is addressing zero-day vulnerability and supply chain cybersecurity, and recognizing the geographically distributed and interconnected manufacturing and present geopolitical divide. We are coming with 2 important initiatives. One is trusted vendor system that is in the line with National Security Directive for telecommunication sector. And this trusted vendor system is designed to mandate power sector utilities to procure for trusted sources only. So there will be criteria to identify these trusted sources. Then second one is model contractual clauses for cybersecurity. And these will be having optional and mandatory provisions that has to be incorporated by power sector utilities during the procurement bid. Next, managing legacy system poses a unique challenge. And in power sector, we see that we have a state-of-the-art Windows 11 and Windows 2022 server to going back to the Windows 2000 servers and Windows 2000 and XP PCs. And this unique challenge that has to be acknowledged, and something has to be done about this. A special standard operating procedure and guideline is in development that will provide a way for regular assessment, targeted upgrades, and adaptive cybersecurity measures to ensure continual resilience of the power sector. And at last, a coordinated incident response is imperative. In the face of evolving cyber threat, Ministry of Power has notified CSAT power. Earlier there was 6 subsector CSAT, and now a coordinated team has been established in the CA. To this end, this CSAT team will ensure a coordinated response and swift actions to cybersecurity incidents. In conclusion, our commitment to impose the cybersecurity posture of power sector is unwavering, and this initiative highlight that by staying ahead in adopting and adapting to cybersecurity best practices, we are sure that we will fortify the foundation of a secure and resilient power sector. Thank you.
Thank you, my namesake, Mukesh. It is interesting to hear what the regulator of power sector is doing, and we are very happy. We met MAKP Singh personally at least on 2 occasions, had very long discussions, and I can assure you that they are hands-on and they are working very hard to improve the security of power sector. That's my personal experience, which I got in recent past. And Mukesh is very important team member there. I now request Professor Goyal to honor him. Thank you. Yes.